Hello, and welcome to Guidance for Better Life. Today I want to share another question I received during our Zoom with Prophet. That's where I have a Zoom meeting for 1 hour a topic. The last topic was help with decision making. We take a 15-minute break and then I answer questions. And I've done several of these recently because the questions I think are really interesting. So it's been fun to answer them and reflect and give my thoughts on them. And people are free to try my suggestions or not. We've had some good feedback that some of the suggestions are doing well for people, so I appreciate them giving it a try. This last Zoom meeting, and there's information on Zoom with Prophet below, but this last Zoom meeting I had a question that I think might help my YouTube audience. At least I hope it does. It's a source of a lot of stress. And if we can have less stress, that's a good thing. And I did a video on reducing stress, anger, and I think it was anxiety. This is a different approach, a little different slant on reducing stress. So this is attachment or excessive attachment versus entanglement. And I'll read the question, then I'll try to give you some thoughts on it. Dear Prophet, and this is from a man in Virginia asked this question. Dear Prophet, your teachings on attachment and entanglement have saved me many headaches and heartaches over the years and strengthened me each time I hear your words. Please remind me of the important distinction between the two. Thank you, I love you. Okay, we're not talking about normal attachments here. I'm attached to my tractors and family and grandkids and my dog and all kinds of things, but we're talking about excessive attachment. And I guess excessive attachment is something you learn over time. For example, in 1929, and I was not alive then, the stock markets in the United States, from what I've read, crashed. And I've been told stories or read stories where people that had a lot of investments in stocks literally jumped out of the window and in their life, out of tall buildings, not one-story buildings, but literally died because they were so attached to their stock market portfolio. Now, it may be important, your investments, but is it worth dying over? So that would be an extreme example of excessive attachment. So that's what we're talking about. We all have attachment to our stuff, which is fine. And I'm talking about excessive attachments where it really throws you out of balance. And let me read something from my Spiritual Keys book. It's this book here, Spiritual Keys for a More Abundant Life. I actually cover this detaching from excessive attachment in a key called Balance and Detachment. I'm not going to read the whole part, and I'm not going to talk so much about balance today, but mostly on why we do not want to be excessively attached to something, and then explain the difference between excessive attached and being entangled. Both are somewhat of a negative. And I'll just read a couple. This is on page 169. A certain amount of stress and strain is part of living, but our goal is to minimize or at least reduce the wild ups and downs in our life. You know, these wild swings, like jumping out of a building, a tall building, because your stocks do poorly. That's a pretty wild swing. Balance is a form of peace, and when we are at peace, our communication with the divine is clear. Those that love God and would like a relationship with Holy Spirit, when you're out of balance from excessive attachment or entanglement, then that diminishes your ability to receive divine guidance. But that's for another day also. So basically, when somebody's excessively attached, and I'll give some examples, it can cause you a lot of stress and throw you out of balance, which is not a good thing in life in general. It's not a form of abundance, I would think, to be stressed or out of balance. And if you have a relationship with the Holy Spirit and the Heavenly Father or a prophet, it diminishes the communication ability. So it's generally considered a negative. So what's excessive attachment? Again, that's a little bit in the eyes of the beholder, and it takes time to learn what's excessive in your life and what's just normal attachments. I did a video years ago where, let's say you like chocolate, and who doesn't, good chocolate bar. But if you're willing to knock your grandmother down a flight of steps to take her chocolate away from her, and that's just a silly example here, that would be very excessive. So attachment versus entanglements. An attachment would be like attachment to a certain outcome. You want things to be a certain way, or you want to get a good grade on a test tomorrow if you're in school, and you stay up all night losing sleep after you've done all the studying you can do, you've prepared, and then you're so attached excessively to that outcome, you literally can't sleep. And you're so tired of the next morning, you probably do less well on the test because you didn't detach a little bit and just relax. You did your studying and get a good night's sleep. And if you got good sleep, you'd probably do better on the test. So generally, excessive attachment are to outcomes, how things should go, how elections go, what the world should look like, what people should do in your view. And when you become attached, that's fine to a point. But when it becomes excessive, it's like you put on blinders. It's like these are blinders. All you can see is that outcome. And you're so fixated, so focused on that one outcome that you literally don't see other options in life. You literally become blinded to other options. You might be attached to certain options, but there might be other options that, if you thought about it, might be suitable or at least not too bad. But when you're excessive attached, so clinging, so focused on one particular way things should be, an outcome usually, or the way people should be, things that should happen, how the world should be run, how a country should be run. When you're so excessively attached, it literally, instead of seeing all these possibilities, the more attached you are, it becomes a smaller and smaller view, where you see just a very small spot. And you lose your focus, a broader focus, and you literally become, I would say, blind to options in life, other possibilities. And then if it doesn't go the exact way that you're excessively attached to, it throws you out of balance. That excessive attachment, you worry about it's got to go a certain way, and it causes a lot of stress. And when you're under stress, you're less clear on divine guidance. You're even less clear in your own mind trying to make a decision. You're so focused and so attached on one thing that you really lose your perspective on some options. So that would be excessive attachment. Usually to outcomes would be the most common. Now, on the card here, the question was the difference between attachment, and I would say excessive attachment, versus entanglements. Entanglements are a form of attachment. In some ways, they're almost more debilitating, almost more dangerous. When you're excessively attached, it's to things, outcomes, that type of stuff. When you get entangled, it's usually in other people's situations. Let's say a friend has a problem in a marriage, for example, and they want to bring you in and get advice. And they start bad-mouthing the spouse, and they're maybe in a pity party, and you're kind of worked up emotionally, and they ask you to give them some insight. If you can stay above the fray, not get too involved, too attached, not too concerned with the outcome, mostly concerned with being a clear advisor to them. If you stay above the fray, you do two things. One is you can give better advice. You're more clear. When you get down in a pity party and you get all emotionally wrapped up in stuff, and I've done videos on this, you don't make good decisions. If you look at my Blocks to Spiritual Growth Part 1, when you start getting a lot of fear, worry, anger, get all worked up, we've got a neat illustration in there. You're much less clear. That's Blocks to Spiritual Growth, but it's also blocks to clear decisions. So if you care about giving good advice, if you're asked, if not, leave them alone, give them their space. You want to stay above the fray and not get too worked up and too emotional, like your friend probably is, and hopefully you can give them more clear-headed advice. If you get entangled, what that means is you get down into complaining with them. You start getting emotionally worked up, like maybe your friend is, the person asking for advice. Let's say they're bad-mouthing their spouse. They wonder if they should get a divorce. They're complaining. They only see the negative. They've got a lot of emotions. If you get down to that level, kind of in a pity party with them, or down in that emotional frenzy, first of all, you cannot give good, clear advice. So you're not helping your friend at all. And now you get down into that. You get so worked up and so entangled. That's the word, entangled, or ensnared in their problem, it almost becomes your problem. And now it starts throwing you out of bounds. You start getting in a pity party or start complaining. And I use an example in my book. Now you go home and you start complaining, well, maybe you should leave your spouse. And you start thinking of all the things wrong with your spouse, instead of all the good things. So there's a real danger getting entangled. That's overly attached to somebody's problems. And it's, say, a friend, for example, but you can expand that. If you get down into their emotional mess, and that's probably why they ask you for help, because they're all worked up and emotional. They can't come up with an answer because they didn't stay up. They're not thinking clearly. They get down, they're all worked up, fear, anger, guilt, complaining, pity parties, whatever, victim consciousness. If you allow yourself to get down in that same kind of pool of emotions, like I said, one is you're not clear and you cannot give your friend good advice. And two, you're now entangled or ensnared. Imagine if I was getting entangled in your problems and I lost focus and I get down deep into the emotional quagmire. The deeper I get, imagine I'm sitting in a chair with my friend and I get down in there and I got worked up emotionally like they are. All of a sudden a rope goes across and ties me to the chair. I get further entangled or ensnared, another rope and another rope. And pretty soon I'm trapped within their problem. And now their problem becomes my problem and I can't get out of it. I'm literally entangled or ensnared or literally tied to the chair representing their problem. So two things, I'm not able to give them clear advice by staying above the fray. And now I'm all worked up and emotional, and now it's affecting my life. And to get to a point, their problem literally becomes our problem. That's really entangled or ensnared. You're literally trapped. I had a student years ago, and I shared this in the Zoom. I gave her initial. I didn't want to embarrass her. She got entangled in a neighbor's problem about a dog. She didn't know the situation, but she had an opinion. And for the entire winter, she got ensnared and entangled and worked up and angry every day about how they were caring for the dog. She thought the dog should be in where it's warm and not out in the cold weather. And she got worked up. She got her ego involved. She got her attitude messed up. And she's a spiritual student of mine. She went backwards spiritually significantly, and she pulled her spouse into it and pulled her down. And I think it took maybe 2 years, literally 2 years, to pull her back to level again. She could not get out of the mess. She was so worked up. And she found out she was totally wrong. The dog did not like being in the house the way it was raised from another owner. These people took over the dog. The dog was uncomfortable and not happy in the home. It really liked being out in the cold air, away from the noise and the sounds and smells in the house. The owners knew what they were doing, and my student, who got so out of balance because she was entangled, I think she called the pound or some type of local dog, the local rescue people, dog pound or something, and complained, got all worked up, embarrassed herself, got the neighbors more attention they wanted. And after this whole winter of going just down and down and down and taking her spouse down and not being a good spiritual student, going backwards, way backwards spiritually, losing all focus just about except for this one thing she thought about every day, this dog, and it wasn't being treated right, in her opinion and her arrogance. It turned out we got her back up, but it was at least 2 years. That's much more dangerous than being attached to an outcome of a test or other things. She literally got ensnared and all those ropes where that's almost all she could focus on for that entire winter. At the end of the winter, the following spring, she saw more clearly. She found out the dog didn't like being in the house. The owners were doing what the dog cared for. And my student had been totally wrong at arrogance and worked up and emotional and caused a problem with her spouse also, potentially divorce. It was so bad. That's serious entanglement. Now she's doing much better now, but I believe it was about 2 years to get her back up on track and straightened out. So if you want to help folks, that's a beautiful thing. I would say don't help people unless they ask. Give them the freedom and give them respect to figure out their own problems. But if they ask, it's wonderful if we're asked, to give people our insight. But you can't help your friends when you're down in the same emotional quagmire they're in. If you can stay above the fray, stay a little bit detached, care about them, but not so much you're going to sacrifice yourself, then you can maybe give them some clear advice or help them see the situation from a different angle, different perspective. As far as this example of a spouse, this person getting upset and thinking of all negative about the spouse, maybe you could listen, but maybe you could point out some good things about the spouse, show a balance there. So I hope this helps a bit. Certainly we can reduce stress, and it's just, it can be really, really stressful and throw us out of balance if we get excessively attached to how things should be or an outcome. And even worse sometimes, if we get entangled when we're asked to help people out, we're not doing them any good by getting down in that emotional mess with them. And then it impacts us, and literally we can actually pick up their karma. We can literally make their problem, from a karmatic standpoint, literally our problem. It's like somebody asks to help how to pay off their mortgage a little quick. And you get so involved that now the bank calls you, and now you're responsible for the mortgage. That's beyond help. That's just silly to get yourself in that big a mess. Where you literally, in this hypothetical example, the bank now wants you to pay off your friend's mortgage on their house. That's kind of how this works. So it's good if you're asked. It's okay to help somebody out. But you don't help somebody if you get down in that emotional mess because you're not clear anymore. And like I said, this one student went backwards dramatically for at least 6 months, but it took almost 2 years to get her back up to speed. It's very dangerous, and there's no need to get that entangled or to that excessively attached to life. It's just stressful, and it throws us out of balance, and there's really no upside. So I hope the difference between excessive attachment and entanglement, or being ensnared and tied up, I hope today avoids some problems for you like it did for this person. He says here, your teachings on attachment, and I would say excessive attachment, and entanglement have saved me many headaches and heartaches over the years. I hope today blesses you and saves you some from headaches and heartaches, at least reduce them a little bit. So I hope this helps today. And it's something we're all susceptible to. If you're not clear on this, it's easy. It's almost like quicksand. You can fall into stuff and not even realize you're there, and then it's tough to get out of, especially entanglement. So I hope this helps today, and I'm grateful for this question, and I hope some of you in my YouTube audience get something out of this. Hope it's good use of your time today, and thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching.